We live in interesting times. For the headlines. World leaders kicked off one of their most high-stakes G20 meetings in years on Friday. Russian President Vladimir Putin met with U.S. President Donald Trump on the sidelines of the G20 summit. And President Trump jokingly said to President Putin, "Don't meddle in the election." Temperatures in France are expected to hit a record high as Europe swelters in a heat wave blamed for several deaths, including a 17-year-old farm worker in Spain. And demolition experts have blown up Morandi Bridge in the Italian city of Genoa nearly a year after parts of it collapsed, killing 43 people and injuring dozens more. I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us, and now to the news. World leaders kicked off one of their most high-stakes G20 meetings yet in years on Friday. The G20 summit opened with the traditional family photo. But rows are brewing over a bruising U.S.-China trade war and climate change, despite a more conciliatory tone from U.S. President Donald Trump. U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping exchanged a handshake before the photo, but the trade war between these two giants has everyone worried. In his opening remarks, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe highlighted the importance of free trade, saying it lays the foundation of peace and prosperity.
自由で開かれた経済は平和と繁栄の礎です。グローバル化による急速な変化への不安や不満が時に保護主義への誘惑を生み出し、国と国の間に鋭い対立も生み出していますが、貿易制限措置の応酬はどの国の利益にもなりません。いかなる貿易上の措置も WTO 協定と整合的であるべきです。現下の世界貿易をめぐる状況には深く憂慮しています。世界が我々 G20 リーダーの示す方向性に注目をしています。今こそ自由、公正、無差別な貿易体制を維持・強化するための強いメッセージを打ち出さなければなりません。
Earlier, during a lunch meeting, European Council President Donald Tusk outlined some of the issues to be addressed at the summit, including climate change, trade wars, tensions with Iran, and strained U.S.-China trade relations. He said this year's summit will be a difficult one.
This will be a difficult G20. There are global challenges to be met. They need to step up action to avoid the climate threat, avoid trade wars, reform the international trading system, and to prepare for the digital revolution. At the same time, international tensions are growing. Just to name the examples of Iran or the situation between the United States and China.
The most eagerly anticipated part of the meeting will be on Saturday, when President Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping hold their first face-to-face since the last G20 to thrash out a truce in the long-running trade war that has stymied the world economy. Meanwhile, Chinese President Xi Jinping called for a fair, just, and non-discriminatory market environment within the global digital economy. Now, he was speaking at the start of the two-day G20 meeting in Osaka on Friday. Take a look.
营造公平、公正、非歧视的市场环境， 要促进技术、人员、信息等要素流动，维护全球产业链完整和活力，促进优势互补、合作共赢，不能关起门来搞发展，更不能人为干扰市场。
ありがとうございました。続いてユン
The summit began with an extra meeting devoted to endorsing Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's Osaka Track effort to promote rules for e-commerce to help control cybersecurity risks and promote growth. Xi and U.S. President Donald Trump joined Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in outlining the concerns posed by the so-called digital economy. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin met with the U.S. President Donald Trump on the sidelines of the Group of 20 summit in Osaka. Speaking at the start of the talks on Friday, Putin said he and Trump have things to discuss and noted that their teams have continued working together since their last meeting in July 2018.
Не могу не согласиться с господином президентом, нам есть еще поговорить.
Well, I cannot but agree with Mr. President. We have something to discuss here.
Все темы обозначены.
All the topics have been outlined.
Мы давно не виделись со времен встречи в Хельсинки.
We haven't seen each other since Helsinki meeting.
Правда, наши сотрудники работали, дали нам хорошую возможность продолжить то, о чем мы договаривались.
It is their first meeting since a federal investigation in the United States documented extensive evidence of Russian meddling in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. It's also their first time face-to-face since a Helsinki summit last July, in which Trump refused to side with U.S. intelligence agencies over his Russian counterpart. President Putin has denied the meddling in the election, and President Trump jokingly said to Putin, "Don't meddle in the election," after a reporter asked if he will deliver that warning to Putin about the 2020 U.S. election. Take a look. Democratic divisions over race, age, and ideology surged into public view on Thursday night's U.S. presidential debate, a primetime clash punctuated by a heated exchange between former U.S. Vice President Joe Biden and California Senator Kamala Harris. It was one of several moments that left the 76-year-old Biden, who entered the night as his party's fragile front-runner, on the defensive as he worked to convince voters across America that he's still in touch with the Democratic Party of 2020 and best positioned to deny U.S. President Trump a second term.
I do not believe you are a racist. And I agree with you when you commit yourself to the importance of finding common ground. But I also believe, and it's personal, and it was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of two United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country. And it was not only that, but you also worked with them to oppose busing. And, you know, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
If we want to have this campaign litigated on who supports civil rights and whether I did or not, I'm happy to do that. I was a public defender. I didn't become a prosecutor. I came out and I left a good law firm to become a public defender when in fact my city was in flames because of the assassination of Dr. King. But so the bottom line here is, look, everything I've done in my career, I ran because of civil rights. I continue to think we have to make fundamental changes in civil rights. And those civil rights, by the way, include not just only African Americans, but the LGBT community.
But
I did not oppose busing in America. What I opposed is busing ordered by the Department of Education. That's what I opposed.
Well,
I
there
did
was
not
a
oppose.
failure of states to integrate
No, but-
public schools in America. I was part of the second class to integrate Berkeley, California public schools almost 2 decades after Brown v. Board of Education.
Because your city council made that decision. It was a
So
local
that's where the
decision.
federal government must step
The
in. That's
federal
why we have the
government
Voting
must
Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. That's why we need to pass the Equality Act. That's why we need to pass the ERA, because there are moments in history where states fail to preserve the civil rights of
I
all
have
people.
supported the ERA from the very beginning when I
Vice
ran
President
for the
Biden, 30 seconds. And you just actually mentioned it. Many Americans
Now,
already-
one of the lesser-known candidates on stage, California Representative Eric Swalwell, took a swipe at Biden's advanced age. Either Biden or Sanders would be the oldest president ever elected.
Let's please.
I was 6 years old when a presidential candidate came to the California Democratic Convention and said, "It's time to pass the torch to a new generation of Americans." That candidate was then Senator Joe Biden. Joe Biden was right when he said it was time to pass the torch to a new generation of Americans 32 years ago. He's still right today.
I'm still holding on to that torch.
Part of Joe's generation. I'm all for part of Joe's
Meanwhile, Mayor Pete Buttigieg was put in the hot seat during the second Democratic presidential debate when, in the aftermath of an officer-involved shooting in South Bend, Indiana, he was asked, why is the city's police force so white? Again, let's listen in.
Your community of South Bend, Indiana, has recently been in uproar over an officer-involved shooting. The police force in South Bend is now 6% black in a city that is 26% black. Why has that not improved over your 2 terms as mayor?
Because I couldn't get it done. My community is in anguish right now because of an officer-involved shooting. A black man, Eric Logan, killed by a white officer. And I'm not allowed to take sides until the investigation comes back. The officer said he was attacked with a knife, but he didn't have his body camera on. It's a mess, and we're hurting.
Do you do? Day one, hour one.
Ms. Williamson
My
with the
first
last
call
word.
is to Prime Minister Hussein.
Eagle News International will be right back. Stay tuned.
Health is our most important asset, and it should always be a constant effort to seek ways to take care of it.
And we're still following the developments out of the G20 summit in Osaka. Russian President Vladimir Putin has met with outgoing British Prime Minister Theresa May, the first such top-level encounter in years. Relations between Russia and Britain have been in tatters over the March 4, 2018 nerve agent attack on double agent Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia in the city of Salisbury. They spent weeks in critical condition but recovered. Britain has accused Russia of poisoning them with the nerve agent Novichok. Accusations Moscow has denied. The poisoning has triggered a major diplomatic crisis with Russia and the West expelling hundreds of envoys. Now, May said before the summit that Britain would push for the two Russian military intelligence officers accused of involvement in the attack to be brought to justice. In an interview with the Financial Times before the G20 summit, President Putin insisted that Russia had nothing to do with the poisoning. He also argued that bilateral ties were far more important than the fuzz about spies and not worth 5 kopecks. Putin and May last met in 2016. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin also shared his thoughts on modern liberalism and said it was obsolete. The Russian president said the ideology that has underpinned Western democracies for decades had outlived its purpose. Take a look.
Потом есть, знаете, вот эта современная так называемая либеральная идея, да? Она, по-моему, себя просто изжила окончательно. По некоторым ее элементам просто наши западные партнеры признали, что некоторые ее элементы просто нереалистичны.
He also said German Chancellor Angela Merkel made a big mistake in her migrant policy and said President Trump's wish to build a wall on the border with Mexico may be excessive, but at least he was doing something to stop the flow of migrants and drugs.
У него кардинальная ошибка. Вот сейчас можно того же Трампа критиковать сколько угодно за его желание такое построить стену. Ну, может быть, это и излишне, не знаю, что там между Мексикой и США. Наверное, может быть, я не спорю. Но что, ведь что-то он должен делать с этим потоком иммигрантов. С потоком наркотиков он что-то должен делать. Никто же ничего не делает. Но эта либеральная идея, она предполагает, что вообще ничего не надо делать, понимаете? Вот и все там, убивай, грабь, насилуй, тебе ничего, потому что ты иммигрант, надо защищать твои права. Какие права? Нарушил? Получи наказание за это. Поэтому сама эта идея сама себе жила, и она вступила в противоречие с интересами подавляющего большинства населения. Спрятался, кто-то еще куда-то спрятался. Мы-то здесь при чем?
Meanwhile, European Union President Donald Tusk blasted Russian President Vladimir Putin for suggesting in an interview with the newspaper Financial Times that we just saw that liberalism was obsolete. Take a look.
I have to say that I strongly disagree with the main argument that liberalism is obsolete. We are here as Europeans also to firmly and univocally defend and promote liberal democracy. Whoever claims that liberal democracy is obsolete also claims that freedoms are obsolete, that the rule of law is obsolete, and that human rights are obsolete. For us in Europe, these are and will remain essential and vibrant values. What I find really obsolete are authoritarianism, personality cults, the rule of oligarchs, even if sometimes they may seem effective.
We'll be right back after this short break. Stay tuned.
Health is
Eagle Broadcasting Corporation will be conducting a tree planting activity under its theme, EBC Cares. Tree planting is not only important for our environment. We need to plant trees for life. Trees provide oxygen and help clean the air we breathe, save and filter the water we drink, conserve our energy, and many more. So join us on our tree planting activity this June 29, 6 a.m. at La Mesa Watershed. See you there.
Net25 is now available on OSN, the largest entertainment network in the Middle East and North Africa.
Hello po sa inyong lahat diyan. Ako po si Leo Obligar at araw-araw tayong magkakasama sa Piskante ng Bayan.
Watch your favorite Net25 shows on OSN Channel 725, same day as the Philippines. Net25 shows live and on demand anytime, anywhere, on any mobile device on OSN Play.
Dito po sa Net25, OSN, siguradong at home ka dito.
Pep News, Linggo, alas 4 hanggang alas 5 ng hapon.
Temperatures in France are expected to hit a record high on Friday as Europe swelters in a heat wave blamed for several deaths, including a 17-year-old farm worker in Spain. The Spanish teenager felt dizzy while helping harvest wheat in the southern Andalusia region after a dip in a swimming pool to cool off. He collapsed with convulsions and was rushed to hospital in the town of Cordoba, where he later died, according to the regional government. Elsewhere in Spain, a 93-year-old man collapsed and died on the street in the northern city of Valladolid, according to police, who gave heat stroke as the cause of the death. Heat-related deaths have also been reported in Italy, France, and Germany, mainly among the elderly. France was bracing for what could be the hottest day in its history on Friday, an extraordinary event for June, reaching more than 44 degrees Celsius. A meteorologist at Meteo France has called this week's heat wave in France exceptional, as it has come earlier in the summer than usually expected. Speaking at the Meteo France headquarters, Christelle Robert also noted that with climate change, these extremes will be accentuated with earlier or later heat waves. Take a look.
Alors, une canicule de cette ampleur est exceptionnelle au mois de juin, de façon aussi précoce dans l'année. On en a déjà observé par le passé, mais d'une intensité moindre. Il faut s'attendre, dans le cadre du changement climatique, à avoir des canicules plus fréquentes et plus intenses. Donc, puisque le changement climatique va accentuer les extrêmes, on a toujours eu des extrêmes donc liés au centre d'action météo, mais avec le changement climatique, ces extrêmes vont être accentués, d'où des canicules plus précoces ou plus tardives.
Now, the temperatures in Paris on Wednesday reached 34 degrees Celsius and higher in some other parts of France. Friday, 45 degrees. 15,000 people died in France in August 2003 in a heat wave. Robert predicts that on Friday, today, temperatures in some parts of France could beat the national record of just over 44 degrees Celsius. A forest fire in Torre del Español in Spain's northeastern Catalonia region raged out of control, devouring land despite the efforts of hundreds of firefighters. Catalonia's Forest Agent Service said the fire likely began when an improperly managed pile of manure at a chicken farm self-combusted in the extreme heat. Some 350 firefighters, backed by around 230 soldiers and 15 aerial tanker aircraft, were at the scene of the blaze on Thursday. The situation is critical, according to Fire Service Chief Antonio Ramos. He said, "We haven't seen a fire like this in the region in 20 years." With temperatures expected to reach up to 42 degrees Celsius on Friday, Spain has issued a red level warning to its population. Meanwhile, troops have been sent to help thousands of people displaced by a volcanic eruption on a remote archipelago in Papua New Guinea, according to the Prime Minister on Friday, as a second volcano erupted. Lava and ash flows from Mount Ulawun, one of the world's most hazardous volcanoes, have subsided, but between 7,000 and 13,000 people are believed to have been displaced, and a state of emergency has been declared. Local MP Joseph Lilang said as many as 13,000 people may have been displaced and 1,000 have lost their homes, while Leo Poricura, an official with the West New Britain Disaster Office, put the number of displaced at around 7,000. Stephen Saunders, a surveyor at Rabaul Volcano Observatory, confirmed there was a small one-off explosion from Ulawun in the early hours, but it wasn't sustained and activity has eased. The emergency response was hampered by the closure of the region's main airport, which Saunders said was covered by around 3 centimeters of ash and remained closed, as the authorities were struggling to get to grips with disruption caused by Mount Ulawun. Volcanologists reported that the nearby island volcano of Manam had begun to erupt. Manam is one of Papua New Guinea's most active volcanoes and last erupted in January. It is a volcanic cone that towers out of the sea north of Papua New Guinea's mainland and has a history of eruptions, with significant activity in November 2004 forcing the evacuation of some 9,000 people. Demolition experts have blown up Morandi Bridge in the Italian city of Genoa nearly a year after parts of it collapsed, killing 43 people and injuring dozens more. Take a look. Residents living below the bridge were evacuated from their homes early Friday ahead of the implosion of the 2 remaining towers. The bridge, which partially crumbled on August 14, 2018, following heavy rainfall, will be replaced by a new one designed by Italian architect Renzo Piano. The structure is critical for Genoa residents as it connects the A10 highway that goes toward the French Riviera and the A7 highway that continues north toward Milan. In other news, harrowing security camera video shows a teenager catching a toddler after she fell from an Istanbul building. Take a look. Syrian national. 2-year-old Dora Muhammad, a Syrian national, fell from a second-floor open window last Thursday, according to Turkey's private Demiroren News Agency, or DHA. She was caught by an Algerian 17-year-old Fazi Zabat, who worked nearby and noticed she was about to fall. Luckily, Mr. Zabat saw her from the street and was able to catch her without any injuries. Fazi, who works in a nearby frame workshop, remained modest after the rescue and told DPA, "I did what was necessary." Now, the incident took place in Istanbul, Turkey. DHA also said Dora's father, Yusuf Muhammad, gave Zabat 200 Turkish lira or $35 reward for saving his daughter's life. Doha apparently fell from the window while her mom was distracted while she was cooking. Eagle News International will be right back. Stay tuned. Asian markets fell on Friday as investors keep a nervous watch on developments in the G20 summit, with trade top of the agenda and a key focus on the much-anticipated meeting between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping. Equities have enjoyed a largely positive couple of weeks on hopes for progress in the head-to-head between the leaders of the world's top two economies, though the possibility of failure continues to make dealers nervous. As heads of the 20 leading economies started the summit in Osaka, President Trump said he was hopeful for Saturday's talks with President Xi.
We're going to have a meeting with President Xi of China tomorrow, as you probably have heard. There seems to be a rumor about that, and we are indeed, and we look forward to it. I think it'll be productive, and who knows, but I think it'll be productive. At a minimum, it will be productive. We'll see what happens and what comes out of it. But we're doing very well as a country. The United States is the hottest country in the world right now, and the economy, all of the leaders have come up and said it's incredible what's happened with the United States, and they congratulate me and congratulate the people of the United States.
Now, traders were bidding their time pushing regional markets lower, with Shanghai ending 0.6%, while Tokyo and Hong Kong were each off to 0.3%. Sydney shed 0.7%, Singapore and Seoul slipped 0.2% apiece, while Taipei, Manila and Mumbai were also down, though Wellington and Jakarta edged up. Apple's longtime design chief, Jony Ive, who played a key role in the development of the iPhone and other iconic products, is leaving the tech giant to set up his own firm, according to Apple. Ive will depart later this year to form an independent design company which will count Apple among its primary clients, Apple said in a statement. Ive will pursue personal projects, but also continue to work closely on a range of projects with Apple, according to the California tech company. British-born Ive joined Apple in 1992 and designed the iPod, iPhone, iPad, and MacBook, as well as the iOS software system for Apple devices. Ive was a key collaborator of the late Steve Jobs at Apple when the company's fortunes were revived with the development of the iPod and later the iPhone. In Walter Isaacson's biography, Jobs praised Ive as being his partner in dreaming up devices. The company said its design team leaders, Evans Hankey and Alan Dye, will report to Jeff Williams, Apple's chief operating officer. Ive said the design team will certainly thrive under the excellent leadership of Evans, Alan, and Jeff, who have been among my closest collaborators. Apple, which recently lost its claim as the world's most valuable company, has been working to emphasize services such as music and digital payments amid a slowdown in sales of iPhones and its longtime revenue driver. U.S. President Donald Trump's next tweet might come with a warning label. Now, tweets that Twitter deems to involve matters of public interest, but which violate the service's rules, will soon be obscured by a warning explaining the violation and Twitter's reasons for publishing it anyway. Users will have to tap through the warning to see the underlying message. Twitter said the new policy applies to all government officials, candidates, and similar public figures with more than 100,000 followers. The new stance could fuel additional Trump anger towards social media. The president routinely complains without evidence that social media sites are biased against him and other conservatives. Twitter's rules prohibit threatening violence against a person or group, engaging in targeted harassment of someone, or inciting others to do so, such as wishing a person is harmed. It prohibits hate speech against a group based on race, ethnicity, gender, or other categories, and disallows the threatening or promoting of terrorism. The company has long exempted public figures from many of its usual rules, contending that publishing controversial tweets from politicians encourages discussion and helps hold leaders accountable. All right, we're having a bit of a technical problem. We'll be back right after this short break. Stay tuned.
All the time, in our community, in our country, around the world, events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced. Eagle News, because we live in interesting times.
Watch your favorite Net25 shows on OSN channel 725, same day as the Philippines. Watch your favorite Net25 shows live and on demand anytime, anywhere on any mobile devices on OSN Play.
U.S. President Donald Trump's next tweet might come with a warning label. Tweets that Twitter deems to involve matters of public interest, but which violate the service's rules, will soon be obscured by a warning explaining the violation and Twitter's reasons for publishing it anyway. Users will have to tap through the warning to see the underlying message. Twitter said the new policy applies to all government officials, candidates, and similar public figures with more than 100,000 followers. The new stance could fuel additional Trump anger towards social media. The president routinely complains without evidence that social media sites are biased against him and other conservatives. Twitter's rules prohibit threatening violence against a person or group, engaging in targeted harassment or someone, or inciting others to do so, such as wishing a person is harmed. It prohibits hate speech against a group based on race, ethnicity, gender, or other categories, and disallows the threatening or promoting of terrorism. The company has long exempted public figures from many of its usual rules, contending that publishing controversial tweets from politicians encourages discussion and helps hold leaders accountable.
There have been calls on Twitter since President Donald Trump was elected to remove him from Twitter, or at least remove some of his tweets that critics have considered to be abusive or inciting violence against various groups. And while Twitter has never publicly commented on Trump specifically, they have long held that tweets by prominent politicians are of the public interest, and they should be left up on the side, even if they might violate Twitter rules. The idea is that it's better for these tweets to be out in the open rather than behind closed doors. That was Twitter's argument. So this is basically a compromise. They're not removing them, but they are adding a warning label, and they're making them less prominent on Twitter. So you're not allowed to harass any individual. You're not allowed to make disparaging remarks about a protected group based on gender, sexual orientation, or race, for example. you are not allowed to threaten violence against other people or these protected groups. Now, Twitter did say that it's possible that if someone tweets something really egregious, it won't just get this warning label, it will still be removed. And also that this is probably not something that will be applied a lot. You know, it doesn't mean that, you know, you're going to see this in your feed every week or every 2 weeks. This new rule goes into effect now, but it doesn't look like it's been applied to anyone yet. It's not retroactive, so anything that people tweeted before today won't be affected. It only applies to people who have at least 100,000 followers, and it only applies to politicians or other elected officials or people who are candidates or maybe successors. It doesn't apply to celebrities, for example.
LeBron James will give up his number 23 jersey to new Los Angeles Lakers teammate Anthony Davis, who will sacrifice a trade bonus to help finance NBA free agency moves. James has worn number 23 during both stints with the Cleveland Cavaliers and with the Lakers last season after he departed his hometown club a year ago in free agency. Davis wore number 23 for 7 seasons while playing for the New Orleans Pelicans. Citing unnamed sources, media reports said James will return to wearing the number 6 jersey he used while winning his first 2 NBA crowns during a 4-season stint with the Miami Heat. A trade deal for Davis will be completed on July 6 when free agent contract signing can be announced, but details about the move revealed Thursday indicated the Washington Wizards are now involved in the transaction. The Lakers will have $32 million to spend in free agency under the NBA salary cap rules, according to the NBA, after the Lakers sent Mo Wagner, Isaac Bonga, and Jamario Jones to Washington to maximum clear salary cap space. Davis has also agreed to waive a $4 million trade bonus to create additional salary cap space that would enable the Lakers to pursue another maximum level NBA free agent. The move allows the Lakers to build a supporting cast around James and Davis, who could combine into a formidable Lakers duo in the mold of Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant, or the Lakers' 1980s Showtime era stars Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. The Lakers could also go for another top-level talent to form a star trio the way James did with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh in Miami, or alongside Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving in Cleveland. To help complete the Davis to the LA deal, the Wizards will send money to the Pelicans and the Lakers will send a 2022 second-round NBA draft choice to Washington. The Lakers were expected to make a run at 2014 and 2019 NBA Finals Most Valuable Player Kawhi Leonard, a Los Angeles native coming off a championship run with the Toronto Raptors. The Los Angeles Clippers are also expected to meet with Leonard next Tuesday, while the Raptors reportedly will be allowed to make the last presentation to Leonard next week before he decides on his options for next season. NBA star Stephen Curry visits Tokyo to inspire young underdog athletes like himself one time in his underrated tour. Curry also talks about Rui Hachimura, who became the first Japanese-born player to be drafted in the first round of the NBA draft last week.
It's exciting for the NBA to have representation from Japan and countries all over the world, and it speaks to how the game of basketball is growing everywhere, and especially here. So for him to be a trailblazer in terms of doing something that's never been done for this country, and hopefully inspiring kids from all ages to pick up a basketball and learn the game themselves. And so that's what it's about. And basketball opens up a lot of doors. It creates a lot of different, great experiences. You meet amazing people. Honestly, not everybody's going to make it to the NBA, but the game has a lot to offer in every different level. So that's the message that I think Rui has kind of proven, and in my trips here, trying to spread that even more, just the love of the game and what it can provide to anybody who picks up the basketball and plays.
In Major League Soccer, the Vancouver Whitecaps survived the Colorado Rapids by a point. Here's Jason Manawis for the report.
The Vancouver Whitecaps were able to earn a point after coming to a draw against the Colorado Rapids. It was clear early that the surging Rapids were ready to be aggressive against the shorthanded Whitecaps. With several players away due to the Gold Cup, including their best defender, Daniil Henry, the Rapids were able to take a 2-0 lead. Coach Mark Dos Santos admits that the early part of the game had him on his heels.
When you have to address and assess and make changes like that, when there's a Gold Cup and two of your center backs that have been playing in a back three, being Daniil and Derek, are not there, then you have to make changes. And I think those first 20-25 minutes were difficult for us to adjust.
But despite the poor defense and several missed opportunities, Vancouver was able to cut the lead down to 1 after a Freddie Montero penalty. The energetic start to the second half ultimately led to Jordi Reyna's crowd-pleasing free kick that evened the score 2-2. However, even with the strong effort to tie the game and